Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Monday, up and at 'em, guys. January 20th of 2025. So, what are we going to be talking about today? Well, time management. And you're probably going to look at me funny by saying, what do you mean time management? I mean, how to make your day easier and flow better. So, stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. My name is Eric, and yes, this is the weekday, Monday through Friday. Today is Monday, the 20th of January, 2025. So, what do I mean by time management? I mean, from personal experience, I've had quite a few instances that I can think of where I just basically chased my tail all day and didn't get a lot accomplished because I kept rehashing and doing things, or I would get interrupted in something that I was trying to get done and it get put off because the next thing is on my plate. So, what's the best way to kind of solve that problem? Well, you only have just so many hours a day, right? And if you're trying to, in a business, the idea is to make as much money as you can in that 8 or 10 hour day, right? And in order to accomplish that, things have to streamline. That means there shouldn't be a lot of discussion between you and your mechanic or you and your customer. If a customer is dropping off a lawnmower and says, I want it serviced, that should be straightforward, right? And when you're writing up the timesheet, if you keep track of it on the computer, you're going to put in a general service. And what takes place with a general service is you look over the belts, the wear and tear on the pulleys. That's all part of a service. So you shouldn't have to explain to your mechanic what needs to be done on that unit. They should know already what it is. And if they don't know, print out, create a checklist, if a need be, of what a general service is. In our shop, per se, if somebody brought in a riding lawnmower for a general service, we're going to take the hood off. We're going to pressure wash it to make sure that we can see everything. We're going to blow the decks off. Sometimes we're going to drop the decks. Depends on the situation. We're going to start by draining the oil and putting the dipstick on top so that we know that there's no oil in that unit. Oil filter will come off, but in the meantime, while it's draining, we're going to be taking the fuel filter and swapping that out. 2 plugs, swapping that out. But before any of that can happen, did that unit drive under its own power into the shop? Because if it didn't drive in under its own power, or the customer forgot to say he couldn't get it started, so they just pushed it on and pushed it off, that makes it a whole different scenario, right? Now we have to go back and start at the beginning, because if we find out it doesn't have any compression and she's just a tired whip puppy, if you've changed the plugs, oil filter, fuel filter, air filter, that's time wasted. You see what I'm saying? So having a set procedure, that's another good word, procedure, of how you want things done and in the manner that you want things done. It doesn't mean that you as a shop owner or a manager has to have the same skill set that your mechanic does. But, and this is a big but, you do need to know the steps the correct steps of how each unit should come in based on if it's running, not running, or it's got an issue, right? And if it's not running, you're going to have a different set of procedures, rules, than if your mechanic drove it into the shop and onto the lift, right? Because if it drove in and onto the lift and it sounded good, good chances are it's just a general service and look over. If it won't start, we got to try something different. But this can apply to, anything you do in life. And it just makes it so much easier if you have kind of an idea going in how to save time. And the biggest thing that we are given that's limited on this earth is time, right? So we only have just so much time to get stuff done in any given day. There's a 24-hour cycle, right? But you gotta sleep. And the older you get, for me anyways, the more sleep I need. I used to function on 3 to 4 hours. That was my sweet spot. Now it's 6 to 8 hours of uninterrupted. Now, I've done longer. If this thing keeps interrupting me in my sleep, it's like the last 2 mornings, it's almost like clockwork. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it's going off, and I'm like, it's close enough to 4, I might as well get up and start doing my thing. But it's limited me on how much sleep I got. But it's given me another hour to try to get stuff done. But it really hasn't given me that extra hour, right? Because my body needs that downtime to get a nice restful sleep at night. And so do you. So you're going to pay for it either on one end or the other end of the day, right? And last night, by 6 o'clock, I couldn't get warm, so I went and curled up in bed. Yeah, and I fell asleep. I never even got to watch the football game. That's what I was waiting for. But anything that can save you time is going to save you money. And anything that you can save time on out in the shop is going to save you money. And the last thing you want is you or your mechanic overlooking stuff that doesn't get addressed, and it ends up coming back within a week because there's issues. And we could play that game of, well, we didn't touch anything there. What do you mean there? Okay, let's say a belt blew off somebody's mower. Now, good chances are, if somebody's belt gave up within a week after us doing a service on it, that one of two things. Either the belt was bad to begin with and we overlooked it instead of replacing it, or two, the customer's done something to cause the effect of having an issue with the belt. And most mechanics are going to push towards the latter. It's going to be the customer's fault. Just because, the excuse of I didn't replace that, so that's not covered, doesn't cut it. I mean, you can get the cost of the belt out of the customer, but if it wasn't really checked in the general service, should you bill him for the time to now do the belt? See, that's the thing with a small engine repair business. You only get like one chance to get it right and to have your customer have confidence in you, right? And that is, you want to do it quickly, affordable, and have that machine carefree for the summer. I'm not saying that customer is not going to have some kind of problems down the road. They may have. But the boatload of stuff that we see come in for a general service, we don't see until the following spring. And why is that? Well, it's because we've done the check over, and we've checked belts, we've checked pulleys, we've checked to make sure that everything is where it needs to be to give that customer the best start and run for the season. If we're not doing that in the forefront and that customer has to keep bringing it back, are they not going to lose faith in you, your shop, and your mechanic? If it comes in for a particular reason of having issues running and you kick it back out and say it's done, and it comes back a week later with the same problem, that's what I mean by streamline. If you don't have to do it the second time, and some shop owners will say, well, I can bill them for the second time, so that's more money for the shop. Yeah, but it makes you look like shit. I'll be honest. If that lawnmower comes back and that customer has not done anything to cause it to come back, it just came back because there was something really wore on it, yes, it comes back on me. Didn't I check that? The customer paid me to make sure it was going to be worry-free as much as possible for the summer. And that means checking everything. So, even if you sat down with your mechanic and went down through a checklist and had them check the boxes as they were going, that might be one way of doing it. But what I find is, when it comes to mechanics, they tend to make mistakes when they're trying to get a bunch of stuff out in a hurry. And here's a lot of misconception that people get in their head is, let's say your mechanic does a general service on that piece of equipment and he sees it needs a drive belt. The drive belt is wore. Now, getting that drive belt and the time it takes to replace that drive belt is separate and above the service. So you're getting paid for it. And the time it takes to replace it, you're getting paid for on top of the service. The service is just checking things over to see what kind of shape they're in. If you have to change a pulley out, the cost of the pulley and your time. Anything you find is going to be the cost of the part marked up plus the time it takes you to do it. And it has to be a reasonable amount of time. You can't learn on your customers' backs either. And you don't want a mechanic that just sits there and milks it and stands there and stares at the unit and then bills the customer for their time sitting there staring at it. So that's what I mean by making sure it's done right and out the first time. If your shop is running the way it should be running, you should only be seeing that unit once a year. Once a year. Unless that customer does something that causes a problem, but at least they know they did it. And it's not, mud on us, it's they know it. Whether they admit it or not. And I don't know of too many mechanics that can't stare at something when it comes back and say, no, the blades hit this, or the deck, clear the deck off, what have you. I guess what I'm really trying to say is, can you limit how many steps you take in a day? If you have 100 steps that you're doing a day, is there any way that you can reduce that to 75 steps instead of the 100? Well, maybe because I went out the door and then I forgot my coffee, so I come back in, got my coffee, headed out the door, then I remember the coffee maker was still on, so I had to come back. You see what I'm saying? If you could eliminate where you got a procedure of shutting the coffee maker off and having your coffee in your hand when you walk out the door every morning, isn't that saving you time? It is. And that's what I'm getting at with anything you do in life, is that if you can limit the amount of steps that you're taking you become more proficient at what you're trying to accomplish. You don't want to leave out, you know, steps that you need to go through. You know, like getting out to the car and then realizing your car keys are hanging up inside, so now you're going all the way back in. Those steps can be eliminated. Even if you had a sheet on the front door as you're headed out, a checklist. Do you have your coffee? Is coffee maker off? Do you have your car keys? You know, so that you visually look. So before you open up that door to head out to the vehicle, oh, okay. Until you get that steps down so that you're not making those mistakes. And that's with any business. If you can eliminate a lot of wasted time, that gives you more time to get more stuff in and to make more money instead of less money and get better customers, more customers, because you are getting stuff in and out in a reasonable amount of time. And when you're working in a shop, usually it's the 3 or 4 machine rule. And what do I mean by that? I mean, at any given time, you may have 4 units tore down. You need to have the room to have at least 4 per mechanic. The first one they may tear down, figure out what they need for parts. I go ahead and I order the parts. So instead of having that mechanic sitting there twiddling their thumbs, waiting on the parts for the first one, they start on the second one. The second one they bring to me, I got to have these parts. So I order those parts. So now the second machine is tore down. The third one, they start to tear down on that and get ready to give me the list of parts that they need for that unit. But by then, usually the parts have come in for the first unit. You see where I'm going? And it's a general flow, so you're kicking them out. Now, if 3 of the 4 all fell under the service, you could get all 4 of those out and only be waiting on parts for 1, right? But you want to have enough room in that shop for that mechanic, per mechanic, to have at least up to 4 machines tore down. And a lot of times in our shop, it's waiting on an air filter, because I don't stock a lot of air filters. Because most of them that come through, we blow them out, you know, if they aren't that bad. I mean, if they're really bad, then they're going to be stuck there until I can get the air filter in for that unit. But that's what I mean about streamlining, you know, your business. If you can get it done quicker and faster, that allows you more units in and out. And if you're the owner and you're the front part and the mechanic's in the back, you could easily go out and start changing spark plugs, fuel filters, you know, helping with draining the oils. And now you got 2 people out there, because you don't have to be that skilled to do what I just said with the oil filter, fuel filter, spark plugs. You could be doing those if the mechanic is in a teardown mode where the deck is off and they're working on something because the deck isn't right, a pulley on it, or this or that, where you can kind of take up some slack. And now you're getting the rate of 2 mechanics out there, even though you're not a mechanic. But you could help streamline that, or you could sit out front playing cards on your computer instead of trying to make more money for the shop. Just because you're the person out front doesn't mean that you can't get your hands dirty. If you're looking at ways to save money and bring in more money, that's one way. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. The big thing is time management and reducing the amount of steps that it takes to do things. But you don't want to take out critical steps, important steps that are in there. You're looking at the steps that are redundant. You're doing the same thing. Can we do it faster? But we don't want a trade-off. We don't want it so fast that we're missing stuff, right? One way to get it out faster is not to look at the decks and the belts and like that and just do a service and kick it out. That's all fine and dandy until the customer calls and says that their unit is having issues, that it's not mowing right or the blades are bad because you didn't check the blades, you didn't sharpen the blades, you didn't replace the blades. And there could be chunks out of those blades. You see where I'm going with this? There's important steps that you have to do, right? We're looking at, are there steps that are redundant or steps that aren't needed that are being taken that are causing us to waste time? And I think, in my case anyways, no matter where I look at, I can always find steps to reduce, to streamline it so that I can get to the end goal faster. So on that note, you guys have a great Monday, and we'll catch you here bright and early tomorrow morning. Write in the comments your ideas of how to streamline things and where to be careful. You can get it over your head if you start taking out important steps. And that is redos in the shop and making the shop look like crap. You guys have a great Monday.